What is going on, guys? I'm Consumer Tech Review, and today we're going to be doing a review of the Ajazz Dice Fruit Peach Switch. If at any point during the video you want to check out this exact same Switch, there's Amazon links below for the US, UK, Canada, and international links, but let's jump into it. First, let's talk about the build materials. All right, so firstly, the top housing is made of polycarbonate. The bottom housing is also made of polycarbonate, and then I believe the stem is made of palm. Basically, every Switch out there has a stem made of palm. 90 to 95% of them are, so I also believe this one is made of palm, although they do not release any details about this. As for the spring, this is a stainless steel spring, and I believe it's about 20 millimeters, somewhere around that, maybe 18 to 22 millimeters in the range. Again, they don't release this, but a fairly long spring. And this is a 3-pin Switch. There are no 5-pin variants that I know of. Now as well, this has 2 millimeters of pre-travel distance, 4 millimeters of total travel distance with a bottom out force of 50 grams. Now this is a great overall weight. It's right there in the middle where most people will like this. It's not too light and it's not too heavy, so that basically everyone will like this Switch. Some people may prefer heavier Switches or may prefer lighter Switches, but this is not offensive. It's not gonna bring someone to go like, no, I don't like that because of the weight. That's just not gonna happen here. So it's a great middle ground weight. As well as that, another middle ground good thing is the total travel distance, pre-travel distance, all of that, basically the same stuff. This is pretty common. It doesn't have that shorter travel distance like gamery Switches would be, and some people like those, some people dislike those, some of them are better for typing, not better for typing, and stuff like that. So a 2 millimeter pre-travel distance is perfect. That's exactly what you want, especially if you don't understand Switches, you haven't had a lot of time to use a lot of different Switches, and this is pretty much a great weight and the travel distance that you want. If you don't really know anything about Switches, you are going to like this. So that's great. Before we continue with the video, giveaway alert every single Sunday, every video that comes out on Sunday that I do. So once a week, we're doing a keyboard giveaway. If you want to be entered to win a Gas 67 DIY keyboard kit, the winner will be chosen 7 days from the posting date, which is, well, right now for you. Find the 2-second clip in this video that will show you how to enter in this giveaway. So if you want to win a Gas 67, check that out. But now back to the video. All right, but now moving on to stem wobble. This is pretty important with all Switches. Now, this one is a budget Switch. It's in that price range where it is a budget Switch. So how is the stem wobble? Well, right off the bat, this is not a dust-proof stem. If you don't know what a dust-proof style stem is, basically, instead of just having that X on the top of your Switch, you'll have that X plus like a little square housing basically around it that just goes up more, and a lot of times that can mitigate stem wobble. This case, it doesn't have that. So how is the stem wobble? Well, the left and right wobble is tight. It's very good, especially for this budget. It's very tight. There's a tiny bit, but realistically, this is very good, especially for the price. Now, the north and south wobble, that's where it wobbles a little bit. But again, not too much where it's like, oh, that's bad. It's just like it wobbles more than a very premium Switch would. So overall, stem wobble is a full pass, especially for the price point. Let's move on to the Lube Job, because yes, these are pre-lubed. Now these come pre-lubed from the factory, and this is a factory lube job, not a hand lube job. Differences here are, well, a machine doing the lubing versus a person lubing them. Now, typically with machine or factory lube jobs, they tend to be inconsistent, usually a little bit heavy on the lube, but they're usually using a lighter lube. So let's talk about it. There's some good things and there's some bad things depending on who you are here. An interesting lube job for sure. The lube job is extremely light. This is one of the lightest lube jobs I've seen for a factory lubed Switch. Now, if you're used to Keychron, Gateron G Pro lube switches, or Acco has some pre-lube switches, some factory lube switches, and a ton of other switches out there have factory lube switches at this point. It's becoming more and more popular. This is the lightest factory lube job I have ever seen, comparing all the switches I've ever used ever. So that will give you an idea. Very light lube. This is a good thing and a bad thing. The good thing here is the consistency is very good. So you don't have a lot of differences between the lube job between the different switches. And I think part of that is just there's not a whole lot of lube, and they're very precise with the way that they put the lube on. So the consistency is very good. The other thing is it's so light that I literally just lubed right over the factory lube, which is awesome. And that is something that a lot of people do with lighter factory lube jobs, but this one is especially light, so you'll have no problem. You won't have to clean these if you want to lube these up, whereas something like switches that'll come stock in like a Keychron K-Series board, you will absolutely have to clean those before lubing them. That would probably not be a very good situation because those are heavily lubed. So you're thinking, okay, well, what's the bad then if I personally really like that? Well, the bad is that you're getting a switch that is not going to act like a lubed switch would. Now, almost all factory lube jobs are not even close to hand lubing. I think it's usually 25% of what you'll get if you hand lube them. But this feels much more like a stock switch than a lube switch, just a little bit smoother, and it changes the tone probably a little bit, but really the sound is not going to be as affected. The smoothness is probably the thing that it's affecting most of all. And this checks out because the places that are lubed most are the leaf. The leaf is lubed heavily. The leaf is lubed pretty much as I would lube it when hand lubing. The then side rails of the stem are lubed, but again, very lightly. Pretty much all of the stem is lubed, but very, very lightly. And from what I can tell, the spring is completely unlubed. So you do have a little bit of, I wouldn't call it spring ping, maybe slight spring ping. You gotta put your ear up to it. So if you do wanna use these stock, I don't think you would have a problem with spring ping. But again, you'll always get a little bit of that, you know, springy, metallic-y sound if you're putting your ear close to the board. But from my experience, just typing on these stock, you're not gonna get spring ping. So basically the thing here is if you're looking for a switch that is pre-lubed, that you're just gonna put right into your board, this is not the best option because there are better factory lube jobs out there that you're just gonna take those, put them in your keyboard, budget switches that are lubed from the factory. This is a great switch. I'm gonna say that right away. It's an underrated switch. You can see by the title. However, this is made more for people like me who are gonna take the switch, hand lube it, which is what I did, and put them on your board. Great when you do that. This switch wants to be hand lubed, and let's just get a really quick sound test. There's gonna be a massive sound test in this video, so keep watching for that. But let's just get a stock and then hand lubed sound test. Take a listen. And that is how it sounds. You can see pretty big difference. Very, very cool. Now moving on to the price section. We're gonna talk about this section before we get to the sound and feel because obviously that's the most important section of the entire video, so the price. These are sold in packs of 45 plus one switch, so 46 switches. So on Amazon right now, you can check the links below if they're on discounted or whatever, but currently, as of now, these are $19.99 for a pack of 46 switches. Now this brings the PPS or price per switch to about 43 cents. Now at this price point, this is considered a budget switch, but definitely on the more expensive side of budget with other budget switches such as Akko Matcha Greens having a current PPS on Amazon of about 31 cents. So you can see the difference between 43 cents and 31 cents, that's a significant difference. But wait, if we're actually gonna compare factory lube switches to factory lube switches, the Akko Matcha Greens are also sold as a factory lube switch at a higher price point. Then that brings the PPS of the factory lubed Akko Matcha Greens to 47 cents per switch. So now we're comparing 43 and 47 cents per switch. So in this case, it's kind of right between a stock matcha green and a factory lubed matcha green from Akko. Very popular budget switch. So for the price, these do make sense. I mean, they're a very nice and a more unique switch, and that's kind of what we'll get into. But these also come with really sick containers. I don't know if I showed them to you, but this is what they look like. They unscrew, they kind of pop off like a can does, and these are awesome containers. I keep these even after using the switches just because, I mean, I can put other switches in them, or if I lube switches, I can put them in it. So that is kind of cool. But yeah, overall, I think the price is very good. All right, but now let's move on to sound and feel, the most important section of the entire video. We are gonna be doing a massive sound test with a bunch of different boards, but right now, let's talk about it. Firstly, I wanna say these are unique sounding switches, which is uncommon at this price point. There are a lot of budget switches out there, and a lot of them do a really good job at being a really good like linear switch. ACO makes some great linear switches that are just great linear switches. They have a nice amount of smoothness, low stem wobble, overall good build quality at the right price point. However, most of ACO switches are not as unique, which is not at all a bad thing because you guys know I recommend ACO switches all the time. It's probably one of the best entry-level switches to get just because there's so many variants and you can't really go wrong. But only a few of them sound especially unique. Like the ACO silver switches sound very unique. The ACO vintage whites sound very unique. But again, those two switches are not like your average switch. Not everyone is going to like both of those switches at all. They're very specific on what they do. The ACO silver switch has a much shorter travel distance. It overall feels different. I personally love it. But then the vintage white is incredibly light, way lighter than probably a lot of people would like. And it's an incredibly poppy switch. So if you're not into that, and most people will not be into those kinds of switches, this is kind of the point here, is that most of those ACO budget switches are very good entry-level average switches. This one has good middle ground with travel distance and weight, but yet it is unique. And let's talk about that. The unique sounding part is not actually the bottom out, which is kind of what a lot of people will kind of focus on. This is not necessarily the bottom out sound, but it is the rebound sound coming back up. That is what's very unique. So especially if you type fast, this is something that's going to sound awesome. Now, this switch pairs extremely well with more dense boards. So if you have a heavily modded plastic board, this is gonna go well with that. Metal boards, this does very well with. If you have very plasticky sounding boards that are not well dampened, this is probably not gonna go well with that. But again, do some modding and you'll make it a dense board. However, I would say mitigating vibrations would make this sound significantly better. This is a refined sounding switch, especially when the rest of the board is very refined. I don't know. This switch sounds way different than I thought it was going to. I honestly didn't think it was gonna sound as unique as it does. And again, this switch is in a similar price point to a lot of other switches. I know I'm gonna hear Gateron Milky Pro yellows, but these things are very unique. Now, after hand lubing these, they come alive. The feel is very, very smooth. Now, not quite as smooth as something you would get with a 70 to 90 cent per switch range, but honestly, I mean, you're not gonna get that at this price point. There's a slight amount of scratchiness, very slight after hand lubing them, but the sound is absolutely fantastic. And if you're not used to more custom grade switches, you're going to absolutely love these. They're nice and smooth, they sound fantastic, and that rebound sound especially. But let's go ahead and get that sound test. First, we're gonna do stock, and then we're gonna do hand lubed on a ton of different boards. Here is the back-to-back sound test of a bunch of different keyboards with the Ajazz Diced Fruit Peach switches. Take a listen. And that is how it sounds. I absolutely love these switches. Very, very nice. But now the last section, are they worth it? Well, I think the answer is pretty clear. They're absolutely worth the price, and honestly, these are switches that are very underrated. They definitely need more attention. So the Ajazz Dice Fruit Peach switches get the CTR stamp of approval. Great switches. However, are these for everyone? No. The people that they are for is if you want to hand lube them, then it's a yes. But if you're gonna get these and assume that they're going to sound like lubed, like factory lubed switches, and they are factory lubed, but again, it's too light to make a difference where they sound like they are hand lubed. These are not gonna sound like they're hand lubed out of the box, but if you're ready to hand lube them, absolutely yes. Again, if you want to check them out, there are Amazon links below for the US, UK, Canada, and international links. So again, if you get these, hand lube them. If you don't want to hand lube, don't get them. Get something else. But yes, this was Consumer Tech Review. Make sure to find that 2-second clip somewhere in the video. I promise it's there. I had a lot of people commenting last video, where is it? I can't find it. I've watched it a bunch of times. It's there. I promise there is a 2-second clip on what the requirements are or the ways to be entered to win the giveaway. It seems like a lot of you guys are really enjoying the giveaway when looking at all the comments from last video. So great. I'm excited about this. Hopefully we can ramp it up to more keyboards per video. But yes, this is a Consumer Tech Review, and I'll see you guys in the next video.